Welcome to the Mindset Spot. And our discussion today is actually going to focus on a very crucial aspect that we need to look up and focus on. The Mindset Spot, I'm here with Daniela Fumom Nang, who is the co host. Today, we're diving into a very vital conversation that surrounds the power of nurturing our young people, a young generation, to become the solutions to environmental, social, and economic challenges of the 21st century. Inspired by the words of Frederick Douglass, who once said that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. What this means is that it gives us that foundation to be able to explore how we can empower our young people, our youth, to take the reins and drive positive change in our world as they turn environmental challenges into opportunities. So let's pack up our mindsets and get to work. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back. It's been approximately like 2 weeks, and it'll be awesome to talk about this concept because I think that realistically, children are the future and the youth are the future, both figuratively and literally. So, by us planting seeds of hope, it'll allow many more people to be strong, independent leaders.
Excellent. That's a very good point. And let's dive straight to the discussion. The discussion laying the foundation. Let's start with laying the foundation with the rule of education and starting off with the words of Frederick Douglass, who said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So, if I was to ask you, Afu, how significant do you think the role of education is in shaping the minds of the young generation? What would you say?
Well, I think that education is a vital part in shaping the mind not only of the new generation, but of everybody because I don't think that education is just classroom textbook. Education means a variety of things. Education is holistic. Education could be the education you get to be a better soccer player. Education could be the education you get to be a better singer. Education can even be the education your parents give you, like, oh, don't touch that. Oh, turn off the lights when you're leaving like a room. Education doesn't have to necessarily be textbooks. So I think that it shapes the young minds holistically because although you're learning your math, English, science, you're also learning things that you may not think are as of equal importance, but all almost equally help you in the real world.
Absolutely. So that's a good point you are bringing up there. And I think the power of education, and I think education here, either formal or informal, is quite very, very important. But I want to ask you a question. You see, formal education is what we do when we go to primary school, secondary school, high school, university, do a master's, a tertiary, and a PhD at the highest level. What is your take with informal education? Because I grew up in the village of Jinquin, and one of the things that I learned very quickly is that informal education is just as important. Formal education helps you to write, help you to learn arithmetic, help you to study English, that you can be able to speak English or speak French, Spanish, German, etc. And also help you to understand how the world works. But informal education actually is grounded on the first values that you learn, right? Because before you started going to pre school at age 4, me and mommy had already taught you some lessons. So, what is your take in this discussion here, Afu, to the young people who are listening today? Before I get to the next aspect.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I feel like uh for young people, some people think that education isn't for me. I didn't do my best in formal education, so education in total isn't for me. I'm just gonna go into, for example, I'm just gonna be a rapper. However, even in the field of, I'm just picking on rapping, but even in the field of rapping, there's still education. Learning how to beatbox, learning how to put poems together and wrap them in a fluid way, that's still education. And whether we think about it or not, education is all around us. And before you went to school, as mentioned in your book, which if you haven't gotten it, get it, you used to herd goats. And although that isn't formal education, learning your ABCs, one, two, threes, through herding goats, I'm sure you've learned some lessons which you still apply with you today, such as resilience, passion, dedication. So I think that despite formal education being important, education is all around us. And I think that the word education really discourages some people because formal education, academics may not be their strength. So they feel like they're exempt from education. But education is all around us, and education is also experiences. And And through experiences, we gain wisdom. And through education, we also gain wisdom. So they go hand in hand. With experience alongside education, I think that many young people will be able to plant seeds which will benefit them mentally, financially, academically, in just all aspects, holistically speaking.
Excellent. I think you have very eloquently explained that. And the point is that the formal education today, because I'm bringing this up because if you take like Africa, for example, and other countries in the developing world, let's say in the global south, where we have Latin America, we have Africa, and we have Asia, East Asia, South Asia, some countries that still have a high level of informality, because across the entire world, 85% of the informal settings in the entire world, most of them are youth. But they do have skills. Most of them are carpenters. Most of them are bricklayers. And when you will notice that when it comes to the value chain of solutions to the problem that the world faces today, the informal actors are actually part of the suppliers and contribute a lot. So from what you've said, which goes back to my life story of herding goods, which helped me to be resilient, though getting up to go herd the goods at 5 a.m. was not a pleasant thing, but it became exciting when one of the goods was sold during Christmas and shoes were bought and dresses were bought. We became excited. But the point is, we became resilient. We were able to get up early. We were able to do and carry out extracurricular activity in terms of learning how to do that, which later on gave us the resilience and the ability and dedication to be able to focus on things that we engage in. So do you think that not bringing in informal understanding of these societies into the formal education is making our youth have it easy in the way that they start to think that things are supposed to be easier because they've not gone through and understand what the informal youth or young people pass through?
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
thoughts?
I was gonna actually intercept and say that because when we look at the term intelligence, intelligence is also a holistic term. There's no reason to say that somebody who is selling Maasai beads in Turkana has less of an intelligence rate than somebody who has a master's in business administration. They both are savvy in business in their own way. One may be doing it to serve their family, and one may be doing it to be a corporate mogul. But that doesn't erase the fact that they both have intelligence in their own way. And I think that the informal sector, like you mentioned, really ties its way into the formal sector because when we look at it, in your case, waking up at 5 in the morning to go herd goats, that has helped you in the formal sector. For example, now when you're waking up early for a meeting, you have already developed those skills and resilience that although I don't want to do it now, in the next 1 month, 2 months, or even 2 years, it'll eventually pay off due to your hard work. So I think that the youth today, to answer the question briefly, they need to thoroughly comprehend that everything is intertwined. And just because they're getting their degree or just because they're pursuing formal education, that does not mean that their informal values do not have a, a place on the stage. It's actually the opposite because human beings were supposed to be holistic. However, without those skills that you learn from washing the dishes, or those skills you learn from using a cutlass, or those skills you learn from making your own food, those skills all intertwine with your knowledge of, for example, quantum physics, your knowledge of accounting. Those skills all are supposed to come together to create a well rounded individual. So if we forget our roots, how are we supposed to grow?
Absolutely wonderful question. If we forget our roots, how are we supposed to grow? And our roots seems to be getting forgotten already with this drive of making sure that at least, of course, formal education is important, but it must be married, right, with informal education because the lessons from informal education from our mothers, from our brothers and sisters in informal setting are just as important to build resilience in us as we learn the concepts of physics, chemistry, biology, as we learn language, English, French, German, Spanish, and also understand that some of these lessons that are in the informal setting are actually getting extinct, if I might use that, because as our brothers and sisters, our mothers taught us in those days, our fathers, parents taught us in those days, those lessons getting extinct today are actually a missing opportunity that could have been tapped by many. I think we're having inputs from viewers. Nuela Mayer says, you are intelligent. She says, this girl is intelligent. Then we have Kilash Pratt. He said that I want to add the case how a newborn infant, when hungry, learns to cry within hours of birth simply by learning. And this then gradually forms the basis of informal learning. That's quite very, very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to build off that point that before we move on, I want to build on that point because back to the informal sector, an elder in a village who is the spokesperson for their community, for their tribe, and somebody who has a degree in public speaking or who have taken public speaking courses, we can't say that the elder in the village who their job is to tell and guide the community does not have the same ability as somebody who went to school for it. They were both learned in totally different ways, but they're essentially the same thing, communicating your ideas. So we can't say just because they don't speak a language that is formally written, spoken, or they're not communicating about quote unquote relevant issues, that does not erase the skills that they've learned, and that does not erase the intelligence that some of these individuals have. So like Kalish Prasad said, it gradually formed the base of informal learning. I think that's the same within all scenarios, because even learning how to get on and help your mom sell whatever they're selling, that's an informal skill. Selling in the market, that links back to the formal education we learned through marketing, business administration. So we can move on now, but I just wanted to really emphasize that point that Kalish Prasad
said. That's a very important point, Abu. Yeah, you are bringing up a very important point, and I think I want to add value to that and ask a follow-up question on that, because if you look at the apps, the applications, the computer applications and the phone applications that are utilized today, if you take blockchain, the informal setting actually have this idea of blockchain, because if you take a community in Jinquin, a community in Como, in any region of Africa, they have what we call a communal spirit, which is built around social trust. It built around communal trust, and that social fabric, which is trust, is more valuable than even a currency at times, because then people can then be able to know that if you have 5 people in the village and they're carrying water, for example, and everybody is supposed to carry 10 liters of water a day, that trust means that if that tank or that well have about 20 liters of water or 200 liters of water, they know that they're going to use it not only for one day, but for over 2 days or 3 days, because everybody, because of the trust, will be able to remove only 10 liters of water. And then that knowledge is then transferred into the applications to replicate blockchain, which avoids immutability and actually can be able to ensure that nobody can cheat. So the point I'm bringing up is that the informal knowledge, especially in the global south, which needs to be picked up, can help develop the solutions that the world needs today. And that is also an opportunity to be leveraged in financing development finance. That in as much as there are formal banks, if you look Kenya, for example, having the M-Pesa, it's built around the communal spirit of Chamas. Chamas, the same like Njangis and Tongtings in Cameroon and across West Africa. What is the idea? That you can be able to contribute using your mobile phone to contribute to social issues in the community. Even if you are not available, you still pay your dues. That you can, and it then gave birth to the idea of how you can actually have a national chama, a communal chama from your handset, contributing to social issues, saving in those Jangis, not necessarily having to attend them physically. And so the lessons from the informal setting actually are being opted to inform formal opportunities as well as formal actions. Do you think that with all this that we know, that the global south is not communicating forcefully enough of the opportunities that they have that can be taken up at a formal level to replicate these to solve problems?
Absolutely. Because when we think about it, for example, in Kenya and M-Pesa, you see little shacks that are probably 2 by 2 square meters wide. They're providing M-Pesa Airtel services across a variety of areas and suburbs across Nairobi and across the entire country. So those ideas, through money, when we think of finance, we think of tall, big buildings on Wall Street. but finance can even come down to the infrastructure in slums. It can even come down to extremely urban areas where we wouldn't think that finance is around. And also the communal aspect of these places, it's also about trust too, because these places generally have a lot of money in these 2x2 square shacks, I could say. In these environments, they have so much money, but nobody's taking it because of the communal aspect. And I think the communal aspect is something that is, like you said, with the well and doing their fair share, is something that is so prevalent in the global south that if we were to put this idea out to the rest of the world, I think we would thrive. But because some people have the idea or the self-hatred that, look at my country state, these ideas, how are the Western countries going to react to these ideas? You never know unless you try. And some of those concepts within the global south, in Africa, Asia, Latin America, can thrive as well in Western countries and Western environments, just like how Western ideas are thriving in the global south. So I think that it's not only uh the Western world which is supposed to be providing solutions to the global south, it's also the global south that should be able to provide solutions to the rest of the world based on the informal experiences that surround these individuals each and every day.
Excellent. I think you've laid it down very beautifully. And that is really culminating in this very important point, because the topic of discussion today is how do we nurture the young minds around us to plant the seeds of hope so that they can turn challenges into opportunities, environmental challenges, social challenges, and economic challenges. And for those of you who are just joining in, thank you very much for joining us on this important conversation where we are trying to digest and dissect the very, very crucial topic of how we can leverage on everybody's strengths, especially that of our young people. And this is actually motivated by Frederick Douglass' actually quote, which we did use here today, that did go thus, that if you want to be able to build strong children, you must be able to do that, because it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And Frederick Douglass did say this in 1855, and we have used that today to inspire us to be able to have this conversation. And let's just build on that. This is getting very, very interesting. And we are focusing on how to leverage formal and informal opportunities to be able to march them forward. There is this discussion, which I think, because of the GDP of countries, economic growth from the perspective of instruments that do measure the quality of life, the access to education, access to health, right? Quality of jobs, as well as opportunities. The developed countries do have that, but every country in essence is developing, because the developed countries have not stopped developing. They're still constructing new bridges today, building resilient buildings that can be able to adapt to the changing climate, right? Making sure that the climate proof their investments and moving towards adopting and leveraging clean energy solutions like solar, wind, geothermal to be able to power their operations. It means that every country in one way or the other is developing. And if every country is developing and never stopping the development, because the quality of life continuously needs to get improved as per the Sustainable Development Goals, to ensure no one is left behind, and we ensure that at least we keep our planet not only safe, but also ensure that the people in the planet are healthy. Healthy planet for healthy people, and also ensure that healthy places where the people do live, especially in global south, are safe. If that is the case, do you think that a current educational system in either places, developed and developing world, is missing a common fabric, which is that to build on everything that everybody does, regardless of whether you're in developing or developed?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I feel like it truly depends on the system of education as well, because in some education systems, such as the one I'm doing, the International Baccalaureate, is focused on the holistic being and focused on getting international perspectives. But I feel like it should not just be limited to certain educational systems. It should be ingrained in all sorts of education systems from the formal sector, because the goal is to realistically revitalize our planet to be a better place, so for all individuals, not based on your tax bracket, not based on whether you get snow in your country. It should be based on just being a human being. So I think that although some education systems are talking about this and talking about international perspectives and how the open-mindedness, I think that it has to not just be, for example, the IB system or the AP system. It should be all systems, because realistically, a school in Toronto, Canada, and a school in Jinqing, Com, they're both teaching essentially the same topics, but what sets them apart is just the distance. But I feel like if we had the communal aspect linking together, for example, like another subject like leadership, that would enable the fact that all perspectives, whether international, whether it's Shakespeare or a local author in Lagos, they both have the same grasp and they're both promoting the same thing. So I think that through reading, especially through English courses, through reading and hearing international perspectives, it can create a better place. And a personal example is, like in my science class, we learned about Aboriginal perspectives on science and different theories, which creates a global perspective. So if we were to do that as well with other cultures, the way that schools in Africa are teaching Shakespeare, we schools in the West should be teaching about local artists and local authors from the global South as well.
Very good point. If you look at the entire African continent today, the cultural dimension, especially from Afrobeat, where most of the talented young people are not only showcasing Africa's culture, but they are leveraging it to be able to bring this brand of music, Afrobeats, to the world. You have the Davidos, you have the Wizkids, you have all of them, Shakin Lashant, right? And we have a lot of young people. We have even come young kid. There is Nakoma Ostino, who is singing songs in Com. There is General Pele. There is Master P, Buster P. There are so many of them, right, across the entire continent, who are now taking Africa's Afrobeat to the center of the world. Do you think that this is a positive thing? And if so, do you think this could be replicated to every area? Because the biggest power is what I call soft power. And soft power can be leveraged through music, because you can pass a message of hope, a message of solutions, a message to inspire those who have been uninspired for quite a very long time. And you can also market these solutions that we're saying. Do you think that this is happening at the right time and that it could be leveraged? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think that before I go on, just clarify your question, because there's a lot of ways I could take it, but just repeat it so that me alongside the viewers could get a better grasp of what you're asking so that I don't go on a little tangent.
Yeah, that soft power is one of the biggest tools that each and everyone do have an opportunity. For example, one can leverage X to be able to pass a message of hope. One can leverage Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok to pass a message of hope and that of solutions. But at the same time, soft power is not just in using these tools, but it's also in using our voices, either in terms of talking or singing. And what I've said is that there is the uprising of Afrobeats, that most African musicians today are leveraging it to pass messages of hope to Africans. Do you think that this is something that could be leveraged on to project these very solutions that we're talking from the informal sector to the world through music, since everybody loves to dance and love to shake a leg? We do dance, don't we?
Exactly. And keep on watching, guys, and in a few months your favorite series, your favorite dynamic duo will be shaking their legs again. However, to answer your question, I think that's 100% correct, because when we look at it, music, who doesn't like music? And Afrobeats is making their way to the Western world, and it has been making their way to the Western world. Like, remember that time when me and you went shopping to my favorite store and they were playing Burna Boy? Like, or when we were
Correct.
in England, they were playing Cameroon music, Limbiaka people.
Bibiaka, yeah.
So Afrobeats it's universal, it's sensational. And this can be leveraged in many different ways to speak about global issues, because, for example, during the Egyptian crisis in 2010, people started singing Arabic music, Egyptian artists, to voice their opinions. And I think that was a great way of Africans using their voice. However, we can shift that from political issues to environmental issues. And
Excellent.
many people are, although they're aware, like reduce, reuse, recycle, like climate change is bad, through hearing their favorite artists speak about these issues, they would be more inclined to do stuff about it. Because whether we like it or not, especially Afrobeat musicians, they're influencers. And I'm sure if Burna Boy said, go get these Nike shoes, even myself included, I'd go get those Nike shoes. So if we use it from the sense of, guys, this is an environmental issue, speak out about it, many more people would be enticed to do it, because if they see their favorite celebrity doing something, subconsciously they're going to want to do it. So I think, back to the question, to simply answer it, yes, I think that many more musicians, and through soft learning, whether subconsciously we know it or not, through spreading a message of positivity, of hope, of sustainability, many more people would be inclined to follow the trend of making a greener community, making a greener planet.
I think that is you close it up on the high, which is really where I think builds our next segment of this edition, which is driving sustainability solutions, leveraging on everyone's strength. And in this case, we are saying culture is actually a tool in which it could be leveraged to project not just positivity, but at the same time also project environmental and sustainability solutions that can not only help in empowering people, but can showcase opportunities that they can be able to tap. And that then, as you've said, for example, showcasing sustainability solutions in these Afro beats. If you take the African continent today, where over 60% of the entire renewable energy resources are in here, yet only about 2% are tapped, which means that 98% are untapped. If musicians start to showcase this opportunity, showcase a youth that retool his or her skill in a community in Nakaseke, in the Buganda Kingdom, to Nkolbide in Yaoundé, to Jakiri in the Northwest Province, and to Nasarawa in Nigeria, and to Freetown in Sierra Leone, to countries in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, in Cote d'Ivoire, then the world will start to see, and also communities will start to see, because these Afrobeat musics are danced right down to the local communities and up to the global stage. It means this is an opportunity that could be leveraged. But more importantly, what I think you've touched, and we've touched on this aspect of soft power, is that there is an underestimation of how soft power can be a tool to drive sustainability solutions, especially environmental solutions that can help not only reshape the world, but ensure that people and planet coexist together, but at the same time prevent the changing climate that is impacting and costing not only pain, but we're seeing flood and droughts that are plunging people into places not their own, causing suffering and actually misery because of the warming climate. That said, and I want to move to the other aspect. Do you then not think that those who are listening in the informal sector today, what would you tell them?
Yeah, to those who are in the informal sector and you guys are listening, realistically, I would just say, keep up the good work. And you are smart, you are intelligent. And if we look at it, keep on using your voices, keep on doing what you're doing to spread change in society. Because if it wasn't for your informal businesses, many people would not develop the skills they know today. And if you're trying to break through into the formal sector, maybe you're just doing this to get money for your education. Maybe you're just doing it to pass time. Maybe you're doing a gap year, whatever. Or maybe it is your career. Always remember where you came from. Always remember those skills that you may not think of now that will eventually help you when you transition into the formal sector if you choose to. And for example, the skill of discipline, waking up early in the morning to sell shoes, is something that you'll be like, oh, okay, that was a low in my life. But realistically, it was not. Getting those skills, getting the values and morals of discipline, resilience, and being able to critically think, being able to advertise things to new people, those experiences are invaluable. And never forget that when you transition, and don't let anybody discourage you and let you believe that just because you didn't learn the skill of problem solving in a classroom, that means that you don't still possess those same categories of aptitudes. When in reality, just because you're not formally trained does not mean that you have the skills that formally trained people, you don't have the skills that formally trained people do. So just look at your experiences as a blessing and try to turn everything, see the glass half full rather than half empty. That's all I could say.
See the glass half full rather than half empty. And I think you've touched a point before I hand over to you, because we're almost at the top of half of the hour at the moment, is that there seems to be a perpetual issue, which is shying away from leveraging spaces to tell our own stories. What do you think is the problem? Because uniqueness is what makes the difference. But it seems like people don't want to tell their stories, and those stories are solutions in themselves, because we're talking about communities, right? Their social fabric of trust is leveraged today to create blockchain, is leveraged today to create M-Pesa, which is replicating the communal cooperatives, the chamas, the njangis, the tong, things that we do know that we grew up and our mothers actually still do in the community today, to pay school fees, to buy food, to buy oil, to buy salt, and to be able to even buy a bench in church. So the point, therefore, is, why do people shy away to tell their story, knowing fully well that that story can actually metamorphosize into something that is useful?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it just comes down to self-esteem, really, because and the way that people, especially in the global south, perceive themselves in their communities. Because some people truly believe that because, for example, their community isn't filled with high rises and stuff that are predominantly seen in Western atmospheres, they're not enough. And that brings it back to the internalized self hate, which we need to get rid of, because a lot of people, including people like people, societies in the village and stuff, different cultures, they have stories which align with the stories that are being told in the Western world and provide a unique perspective, not only to the people in the Western world, but to other people in the global South. Because if we look at Cameroon, there are approximately 250 different tribes, and they all have their different cultures and stories. So let's say a woman of a Kom tribe decides to tell her story and decides, let's say she's a local author, a local musician, she decides to spread her message. That won't just be different to someone living in the US or Canada. That'll also be different to someone living, for example, in Gander or living in Limbe. Although it's still in the same country, different ideals, different values that can be shared across, not only moving it from, for example, Africa to Europe, but moving it from one region in a country to another, or even one city to another. And I think that just due to the self-hatred that has been shown, we need to firstly mindset change, get rid of that, and then grow and develop the self-esteem to share these stories, because realistically it'll affect and it'll impact more people than you truly think.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. And mindset change keep coming up. But as Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. How do we change the mindsets of people who are not ready for their mindsets to be changed?
First of all, like, if they're not ready to get their mindset changed, you just don't change it. And like what Frederick Douglass said, you have to start with the youth around us. And that brings us back to the earlier point that we mentioned through education. And in many countries around the world, education, that's a human right, the right to education, right to primary and secondary education in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. So education is something, at least primary, something that all of us can kind of relate to. So we need to start with the education that is in schools alongside the education that people are nurturing the youth with. So if they're not willing to change their mindset, the older generation, they should at least try and change the mindset of the youngers around them, because subconsciously the young people are looking up to the older generation. So if they're seeing a bunch of failed individuals, people who hate their lives, people who aren't doing anything with their lives, they're gonna think that is normal, when in reality it's not. So by mentoring other people, even if you're not at the stage where you want to be in your life, by mentoring other people, especially the young minds, you could plant seeds of hope, which will allow them to spring into beautiful trees of ideas and wisdom and knowledge.
I love that. You can plant seeds of hope. And that's what we are trying to do here today, nurturing the young minds around us and planting the seeds of hope. And if you're just joining us, you're joining us on the Mindset Spot, where we're discussing how to nurture the young people around us as we help them to plant the seeds of hope, as they drive solutions in turning challenges into opportunities. And we're discussing how to use soft power, the power of music. We have the likes of General Pele in Cameroon, the likes of Buster P, the likes of Nakuma Ostino, the likes of so many people who we have Iziko, we have so many people in Cameroon, we have Davido in Nigeria, we have artists in Kenya here, Nameless, down to Zimbabwe, Zambia, and to other parts of the world, especially in the global south, Latin America, Southeast Asia. All these musicians can be able to use the spaces to then drive solutions that people can see. And we're talking about environment here, where there are a lot of opportunity. That a youth in Jinquin who is fabricating a solar dryer, to a youth in the Buganda Kingdom in Akaseke, to a youth in Nasarawa in Nigeria, etc., to Freetown in Sierra Leone. If we could also leverage to showcase these solutions through music, we can actually not only ensure sustainability, but bring impact to scale, because people listen to music, and music is the easiest tool and the most powerful tool that can reshape minds and create right attitudes for each and every one. Is that so, Afu?
Yeah, that's 100% in my agreement, because if we look at the comment, which you should pull up from Franklin Jumbe, he says it's easier to transcend knowledge to children than adults. I think we should train those in primary and secondary. And I think that's 100% correct, because even when we're learning a language, there are psychological studies that show that learning a language as a child is more effective as your brain is still developing than after. And according to many researchers, the brain stops developing at 25. So, and the youth age is around from 12 to I think 30, I'm pretty sure. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we learn how to train these people in primary and secondary, we will have an overall better batch of individuals who are going to strive in the real world. So I think that Franklin Jumbe brought a good point, and we have some other comments from
Yes, we have Alicia's Young Promo joining, and he's saying they should share this. This is a very important topic that we're discussing. We have Franklin, we have Eunice, we have Judith, we have Redrick Young, we have Nuela, we have Sherif, we have people who are joining across the entire world. We have Presat, and they're joining and they're sharing their perspective. Please share your perspective and share, because this is quite a very important topic that we're discussing today. And we think that when many people hear, they can learn. Yes, I think, Franklin, you are right. The discussion actually is building on what Frederick Douglass said in 1855, which was that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And therefore, what we're exploring today is how we can empower our youth, our young people, to think right and do right, to take the reins and drive positive change in the world, so that at least we can spark up our mindsets and embark on a journey of self-discovery together. Yes, Afu, over to you.
Yeah, I think that it's almost 40 minutes and we've raised some really good points. So moving on to my half of the interview, where I ask you questions. So although we spoke about your informal journey and moving from the informal to formal sector through education, although you mentioned it a little bit before, we do have some new viewers. So how do you think your activities in the informal sector, herding goats, has helped you lead to where you are today? As now, congratulations on you're the head of GEMS, Global Environmental Monitoring Systems. And guys, check UNEP. The update has been there. It's official. So how have those steps from herding goats led you to where you are today? And congratulations again on this amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, the point is that your environment is everything. Where you grew up, that's your first environment. And I think I want to put everybody's journey starts right with a single cry at birth, which means that we have a common platform. Whether you are born in the global south or global north, everybody, once that child is giving birth, that child signals his or her arrival to the world with the cry. And what that tells us is that no matter where we come from, our environment is very, very important, because it is from that environment that we start to understand what is good and what is wrong. And if the environment teaches you values of humility, of respect, of dedication, of hard work, and of endurance, then of diligence, then definitely you start to inculcate them at that early age, as rightly said. And as Frederick Douglass said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And inculcating right values at an early age will make you to grow up to be where you want to be, because it is also said that where you will sit when you are old will show where you stood when you were young. And so, to get straight to your question, which is how my informal setting life growing up in that village, small village, beautiful village of Jinquin, formerly called Song, the land of Tufutam, the land of Ingeng, of the flying juju. One of the fabrics of us growing up was that we grew up in responsibility. That at a very tender age, we were taught how to teeter goods, not because we liked it or not, because it was what we needed to do. At that tender age, we were taught to go and fetch water, not because you like it or not, that in the morning you go fetch water and in the evening you go fetch water. That we were taught how to fetch firewood, that we need to get to the forest to fetch firewood, and it was a must. So these were rules and regulations that anybody who defaulted from observing those ended up being beaten. And nobody wanted to be beaten because the beating was heavy and nobody liked it. What am I trying to say here? That responsibility was ingrained in that early age of doing things and following instruction and respecting our elders. And in the course of teetering goods, discipline needs to be there, because if the good gets lost, you will have to explain, not explaining in simplistic terms, but explaining sometimes being beaten at the same time. And if that good get lost and gets into somebody's farm and eat up their corn, then definitely becomes an issue beyond you, and it becomes your parents' issue, because it's not a good thing to happen in a community where people's corns are eaten up by the good. And therefore, this informal setting of respecting elders, of taking initiative at an early age, of knowing that if you don't do it, there are consequences for it, prepared me to not only be able to know that you have to earn what you get, but actually that you have to work hard, because there were so many things you had to juggle: fetching firewood, fetching water, teetering goods, going back to bring those goods home, getting up very early in the morning to take those goods to the bush, making sure that you have to carry water in the morning. And because of all those responsibilities, they molded me and gave me the gravitas to not only know that at least you need to put in effort to get what you need to get, but also leverage what you have to get what you don't have. Over.
Yeah, excellent point. And I think that a bunch of people are congratulating you right now. And wherever you are, I'm just saying congratulations. And guys across the world, digitally clap. Round of applause for your excellence, Dr. Richard Menang, and your promotion. However, back to the good stuff. I think that many people across the world are obviously in some sort of formal education, but have never really experienced informal education. So what do you say to those people who have had a life of ease? And that's okay, because you don't really pick where you end up, where you're going to be. However, what would you say to people who are maybe willfully blind, or maybe a little bit ignorant to the different scenarios across people around the world? What would you say, and how would you encourage people who are in the formal sector to encourage and to foster a holistic blend of both informal and formal activities?
I think that's a very important question. I think you did partly answer that question. The truth is that lack of self-confidence actually reduces our ability to then be able to project our strengths. And therefore, we end up focusing on weaknesses rather than our strength, which then further depreciates our ability to communicate solutions. Because the truth is this, I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is every person's journey starts with a very simple cry at birth. Regardless of where one was born, immediately you were born, that baby cries, regardless of which part of the world. And what does that mean? It means the first thing that a human does when he is given birth is to communicate. And if you don't communicate, then it means that you've not signaled your arrival. And I'm using this metaphor of birth because it's quite very easy to decipher from the perspective that if we can communicate, and that also means it's a way for us to signal our presence, then we should be able to learn to communicate our presence in terms of solutions. But I think for quite a very long time, people do not communicate what they have. They want to demand what they don't have more, and that overshadows the opportunity to then showcase what they have. And therefore, communicating solutions, regardless of where they come from in your community, and making sure that those solutions come to the center stage and global stage puts you on an advantageous position rather than a disadvantage. But we made some time to think that when we communicate what we don't have, then we will be listened to. No, when you communicate what you don't have already, you are a liability, not an asset. Because then you are starting from ground zero rather than starting in the middle. When you communicate opportunities that I am an artist, I've made these songs, you can listen to it. Already you are starting in the middle because then you are bringing value. And then the person can listen and say, oh, wow, this is beautiful. You have a talent. I am ready to support you. You notice that you people are now starting from the middle. And because of that, you are creating partnership, not patronage. And when you project liability from the perspective that you are telling people that this is what you don't have, then you become not just a liability, but you lose opportunities. And therefore, let's communicate solutions. Let's project our strength, not only what we don't have. Let's project our strength, not only weaknesses. Let's project our strengths, not only blame game. And that is quite very, very important. But then in the informal sector, the uptake of those solutions, that is why this conversation is important. That if our mothers in communities were able to use organic manure, the droppings from chicken, to then have bumper harvest, which nurtured our soils, why are we not bringing those conversations into the global spaces and policy spaces? And that is why every opportunity I get in the policy space, I articulate what works in the informal setting as well as work in urban settings. And therefore, the lessons in our communities and areas in which we grew up can only be brought to the center stage by us. So if we wait that others have to do it for us, it will not happen, because only you can be able to communicate and project your solutions. Powerful.
Great point. And I think that you brought in a really good point there, where you don't necessarily pick where your circumstance. However, you can pick in a way to display your circumstance. You could either display yourself as an asset or a liability. And what you're trying to say in hence is, if you display yourself as an asset, you can be able to create more opportunities rather than talking about what you don't have. But by selling yourself and saying what you do have, like, it's kind of like selling a phone. If you have this really good phone and it's all good, but like it's not water resistant, you're not going to tell people that, oh, here's this phone, it's not water resistant. You're going to tell people this phone has a really good camera, this and that. You mention and what you're trying to say entail, and what we're trying to tell the viewers is that mention your skills, don't mention what you need to work on. Mention your qualities, don't mention what you don't have yet. Mention your plan, don't mention the money you don't have. You know what I mean? And this also, back to the informal sector, before we answer Franklin Jumbe's question, we have AFCON coming up in Cote d'Ivoire soon. There are many soccer players who went to academies in Europe, North America, and who got formal training there. However, there are some who just played, like, for example, Neymar Farbe, he just played in the favelas of Brazil and ended up becoming one of the best soccer players of the century. So back to the point, I'm just bringing in sports because that's another analogy that people can easily grasp, is that although formal education is obviously important, if you have passion and talent, you can thrive whether you're in, for example, the favela of Brazil or on the world stage. So please pull up Franklin Jumbe's point. I'll read, and I think he wants you to answer. So
yeah, I think it's too long, but I will just answer it. There's no need to read it because of time, but I'll just project it. But this is the point. That is the point. So the underlining aspect of the question is that what opportunities can we give to them? Now, the problem with that question is, you've asked what opportunities can we give. Let me debunk this. No one gives anyone opportunity. Opportunities are not given, they assist. Yes, this is the point, right? When you wait and think that we can give opportunities to people, that's where you are now starting from a position of weakness. Opportunities are not given, they are taken. How do you take opportunities? Through preparation, through retooling your skills, through embracing innovative volunteerism, getting up and saying that I'm going to form a team in the community so that we can be able to pick litter, to pick any rubbish that is thrown, any plastic bottles that are thrown. Every weekend, we will be collecting those plastic bottles. We will be learning how to turn those plastic bottles into pavement tiles. We'll be collecting household waste. We will make it a Saturday morning activity to move around to collect waste and learn how to turn that waste into fuel briquettes to replace charcoal in communities. We'll make it a Saturday morning activity to then be able to start getting to the internet every week and learning how do we turn agricultural waste into fuel briquettes? How do we turn organic waste from households into burgers? Once that is happening, and I'm telling you, if you do this within 3 months, you are going to learn a lot, and you will be starting from the perspective of this is what we have done. This is the opportunity we have, and this is where we want support. You will notice that you will not be asking for an opportunity to be given because you've already created the opportunity, but you will be showcasing it and attracting people to join you in the journey. And therefore, it means, Franklin, good question, but let's not undervalue ourselves by always asking that, how can we be given opportunity? Because on earth, opportunities are not given to anyone on earth. Forget that narrative. I can tell you from an authoritative position of having gone ahead of you in terms of studying, getting scholarships to go to Europe, what I learned, nobody gives you anything. It is you who can be able to approach even your professor and say, sir, I am planning to do a PhD and these are my thoughtful ideas. But when you say, I want to do a PhD, please give me ideas, it means you don't know what you want to do. And that is already a liability. In this world, nobody gives you anything. You fight for it by preparing yourself, by volunteering to learn a skill so that you are ready. That way, you de-risk yourself and you are no longer a liability, because without de-risking yourself, and what is the meaning of de-risking? Getting prepared. We need to be prepared. And you cannot be prepared without actually enhancing your skills, actually making sure that you equip yourself with the right skills and the right tools. So when opportunity, because what is luck? Luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. Preparedness meeting opportunity is what we call luck. When an opportunity meets preparation, a prepared person, then it's called luck. But there is really nothing like luck if you are not prepared, because then you miss a lot of opportunities. And then he says again that he has in the view, I think, is it still the same question?
That's
Yeah, I think it's still the same question. Yes, I think, yes, Franklin said perfect, and then he's laughing because I think I've hit the nail. And Franklin, you asked a very important question, but this question I'm answering is not just for you, but it's for our young people who are listening to us. And so the conclusion is, no one gives anyone an opportunity. You give yourself an opportunity by getting prepared. And once you get prepared by playing your part, you can then build on that to market yourself. Use internet to market yourself, that you can make fuel briquettes. Use internet, the applications, X, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, to market yourself, that you can be able to make organic manure from agricultural waste. That way, you build a name, you leave a legacy, and then you will then now be able to use those skills and lessons to train others and create business opportunities along that. That's how the world works. This is the reality of the world that young people are not being told. They're told that you will be given opportunity. But the best opportunity to be given to a young person is knowledge. And this is what we are doing here. Wonderful.
Excellent point. And I think that as we're hitting an hour, we're going to start wrapping up. But before we wrap up, I'd just like to say thank you guys for watching. Thanks for listening. And whether you're watching it live or you're watching it in a week or so, these values, this conversation is timeless. And we moved from the idea of planting seeds of hope throughout this to talking about promoting yourself as an asset to a liability. So no matter what stage in life you are, these lessons, these values we talk about in this spot will be applicable for you. Whether you're 7 years old or 70 years old, you too can find something that can help motivate you throughout this series. If you like what you heard, make sure to come back every Saturday for thought-provoking discussions and chats where we interact with you to discuss environmental issues and talk about mindset solutions which can impact not only you but your entire community. So as we wrap up, I just want to say expect the unexpected, and great chat, guys. Love the interaction. And as we keep on going, remember that what Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to transcend knowledge to children than adults.
It's easier to build the young people, right? To build, yeah.
And through
exactly.
that
is
we
it,
can continue to enable our
youth. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
Yes, and we can then entice our youth to develop ideas and solutions.
Excellent. That is it. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. A words made in 1855 by Frederick Douglass. Those words are as relevant today as they were then, and will be as relevant tomorrow as they will be in a year's time. It's been a very great discussion today on how can be able to nurture the young minds so that at least we plant seeds of hope for them to turn environmental challenges into opportunities, to inspire them to think right and do right. Because most of the time we ignore what we have, thinking to get what we don't have. But in reality, we can only get what we don't have by using what we have. It was a great pleasure discussing on these very important aspects. And as we wrap up today, let's carry the torch of inspiration. Let's carry the torch of knowledge. Let's carry the torch of action forward, nurturing the seeds of change within our very young generation. Because together, what we know is that we can create a brighter, sustainable future for all. Thank you all for tuning into the Mindset Spot. Stay inspired and see you next week for more enlightening discussion.
Bye,
Until
guys.
then,
Great chat.
bye-bye.